And that stimulus could be, well, it could be internal too. So we're going the 3 T's: thoughts, traumas, and toxins. These are the 3 things that your body is either going to absorb, it's going to match, or it's going to succumb. So you're going to really have a response to all these externals, internals, and externals, internals. So what is your body doing with that information? Where does it put it? So a lot of science behind all this stuff, and we still need to learn more. But what's fascinating is that we know a lot, and there's all these little techniques that can really unwind the why of what we're doing, make different choices with that, right?
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Boom Vision. Today's interview is my guest, Dr. Ivonne Ferandell-Villarino, our first guest doctor invited to our show. Today's interview only scratches the surface of Dr. Yvonne's wide range of experience and tools in her toolkit, a doctor with a holistic approach to her practice and in life. What are the 3 T's? And I'm not referring to the 90s R&B band with their pop hit Anything. Is that reference too obscure? Come on, don't leave me hanging. DM me on Instagram at Benjamin Ye if you know which song I'm talking about. All right, back to the show. Doc, you're telling me emotional trauma can stay in the body? You'll definitely want to tune in to today's episode. Let's cue the intro. Welcome to the Boom Vision Podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Ye. This show is about how to create success on top of a solid foundation of your mind, body, and soul. I created this podcast to give you perspectives and frameworks on how to strengthen your mindset and gain clarity in finding your true north. It's time for you to live an extraordinary life with vision that you design. Let's get to work. Hi, folks. I like to share a quote. The first wealth is health. This was a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Welcome to episode 16 of the Boom Vision podcast. I'm really excited to share today's interview. This is a special episode because Dr. Ivonne is our first doctor invited to our show. I'm blessed to have met her last year in a workshop that my wife and I took together. Not only is Dr. Ivonne such a warm light and healer, I really resonate with how she approaches her practice in life overall because it correlates a lot with what I share on Boom Vision and how I coach my clients. I'm excited to have Dr. Ivonne join us today because you'll get to hear from her professional perspectives on how she helps her patients heal their bodies through a holistic approach. Like I've said before, it's all interconnected. As a brief background, Dr. Ivonne Ferandell-Villarino is a doctor of chiropractic who works at the Healing Arts Center of Altadena, California. She approaches each practice member as a true individual with their own masterful design. The goal is focus on facilitation and a true discovery towards empowerment for each individual who decides that they're ready to explore as a team. Her approach is a call upon the balance between mind, body, and spirit. She focuses on structure, biochemistry, nutrition, and emotions, and how they are all interconnected. Dr. Ivonne comes from a family line of healers and facilitators. Her parents are retired mental health workers from her hometown of El Monte at California. And her sister, Vanessa, is an acupuncturist who works at the Healing Arts Center alongside her and a team of other amazing holistic health practitioners. Together, they have all learned the value of community and how we are truly all in this wild world together. So without further ado, here's Dr. Ivonne Ferandell-Villarino. Dr. Ivonne, welcome to the Boom Vision podcast. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Ben. I really appreciate this beautiful opportunity to reach others and to communicate with you and see what comes up today.
Fantastic. So, Dr. Ivonne, I'd love to start with your origin story. Can you share with our audience where it all started and how it led to where you are today?
So that's a great question, and I'll preface it with I want to do this gingerly because origin stories are powerful and they're meaningful and they inspire. But I also want to acknowledge this little piece that I've been thinking about lately that since I am a doctor, I listen to people a lot. That's part of the intake, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes we can get really caught up in our story of where we came from, what we are, who did what, da 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 da. And so I can boil it down to I want to simplify this that it's about love. That is my origin story. It is this thing of being loved into being. And when you are loved into being, when anybody is loved into being, you get to do miraculous things with your life. So I'm not unique at all. I'm just a human. I have all my traumas and dramas and stories. That's like not even the point. But the point is, okay, so I went through things. I had wonderful parents. They exposed me to all sorts of really amazing things, alternative medicine for one, the human experience. Just there's a lot of depth there. But when I look back of where I came from, it's just, oh, I got to show up and be who I was, and I got supported into why we exist and what's the purpose of existing and why do we have this one body, this one mind, this one unique offering that is uniquely our own, because we are unique in the sense that we have like specific gifts, but yet the human experience is this full spectrum of emotion, and that is not unique in itself. We all have these very similar ways of operating the world. So I want to say that, and then say sometimes we can get addicted to our stories. So I don't want to go into super depth, but I do want to say parents, they worked in the mental health field. So I really learned early on about the mental health of just the individual. The mind is a realm that is extremely important to acknowledge what is happening in your mind. So that was really beneficial. That was what I was born into. So as I grew older, I realized, well, the mind is cool, but what about the body?
Mhm.
So I got exposed to my dad doing body work on us as kiddos, and exposed to chiropractors, acupuncturists, tons of teacher healer guides all along the way. And that showed me a different realm of, well, okay, so we need people, we need help in life. And not all the time, but when we do, we need it. We can't do things alone, right? So right after high school, I went into massage school because I thought, well, I feel like I got the mind down pretty good. I don't know everything, but I'm going to go into body work. So my sister and I actually went into a massage school together. It was very serendipitous how that even came into our lives, but that's another story. So we went into that realm. And so I had a full-blown career right out of high school. Went into undergrad just to do it because I thought, well, everyone says in society you're supposed to go ahead and get a master's or a bachelor's or whatever. So I did it. I bounced around to different majors. I ended up in geography because I learned that geography is truly this connection between the land and the human, depending on where you are. So I thought that was fascinating because it really shows you nurture versus nature. What did you grow up? What kind of environment did you have? How did you get exposed? And then how much of that doesn't even matter because you just have this innate nature within you, right? So that was fascinating. Just did it for fun and graduated, still had my career as a massage therapist. And then I got a little bored with massage therapy because there's limitations to just working on the tissues. And I realized I kept referring people to a chiropractor that I like to say saved my life. That's
Mm.
Dr. Eileen Kenny. We'll talk about her
Mm.
at some point. But this woman, I went through my own little healing crisis, and it was breakdown, breakthrough. And she was just masterful at finding out what was happening with my chemistry, what was happening with my thoughts, and what was happening with my body. And she connected those three things together. And I felt like a veil had lifted from my eyes. And that my life was forever changed after that moment. That was like probably the most defining moment. And I didn't even care how it worked at the time because it was different. We'll talk about that later.
Mhm.
But I just felt better. So then as I got older, got better, da da da, then I started thinking, oh, well, now I want to know why this worked. And now I'm curious, since I'm in this massage career, I feel like it's a limitation. I keep referring people to her, and I kept telling people, go. And I said, oh, that's nice. But no, we like you, Yvonne. Like, why can't you just go learn it? Like, we have a connection. Just you go do it. I'm like, oh, well, I keep hearing that message. And when you keep hearing something, you get a little push in that direction. It's kind of like it
Mm.
chooses you. So that's how I started to finally decide to do chiropractic school. But that was 10 years after grad school or after undergrad. So I started that profession at 30 years old. I was 29 going right in. So it was I was definitely an older one in the group. So it was interesting to come into that. So that's that's like the short version of it, of just the truth is we need each other and people loved me into being. And I get to be in this place because of that. And all I want to do now is figure out how can I facilitate this type of transformation so that people feel better and they get to contribute in society in whichever way feels best for them. And how do you just turn that on? What's the mastery that is in each of us? Because we are all this like puzzle piece. And I feel like I get to play detective all the time. And then also let you figure it out. Let the person figure out what's happening. Because you are a master. We all are masters. We're all this alchemy constantly within. And how do we hone that in so that we really get to have this free life that feels fulfilling, that feels like the full spectrum of emotion and experience? It's not about, oh, I'm just going to be, I get to this enlightenment period and then I'm happy forever. No, there's lots of challenges in the world. And what I will say though, the older I get, life is better and better. There are certain things that once you're done with, you're done. Like, asking about origin story, I'm like, God, I don't live in that in the back anymore because I've done a lot from my 20s. So I'm like, what is my story? I don't even know. I haven't thought about that. But it's interesting. So that's the beginning of that.
I love it. I love it because, just hearing your background, but also the way you approach life, it's fascinating to me because, and it really embodies who you are, Dr. Ivonne, because, in getting to know you, what I got from that story is that because you have this curiosity of life, but also that you're not afraid of just going with the flow, the universe then is really easy for them to give you signals or experiences to help guide you. And that's not easy for some folks,
100%. And that's like a full body chill. That's one of my little intuitive yeses when I get a full body chill, like, yep, that resonates. That's exactly it. And the interesting thing is when you look back in life, you can think about what's your intuition telling you? What are the signs and signals? I like to call them omens. There's usually a negative connotation to omen, but I have it as positive. I'm like, the world is constantly happening. And I think you said this recently in one of your podcasts too, like it's happening for you, not to you. You're not just like this victim, like passively in it. It's like, it's happening for you. It's dynamic. It's communicating. It's just this beautiful thing that if you show up, it's showing up for you too.
Yeah.
Takes time to trust it though, because you're like, well, I'm crazy. Like, what do you mean life is talking to you? Are you hearing voices? What does that mean? There's so much interesting to that.
It opens a whole new world, right? Because it's so funny because when you just said how your intuition communicates with you is when you get that body chills, I get the same thing. And I didn't know that before because I didn't listen to it. I didn't trust it. But ever since on this journey of coaching and transformation, but really tuning in with the inner work, it's like when I know that, it's like, okay, I'm on the right track. And I just go with the flow because that's a way it signals to me. Right?
100%. And what's happening now that I've, studied all the neuroscience and all the cool stuff behind, your body is literally telling you that this is safe. When you go into that zone and that feeling of like, oh, yeah, that's a yes. That's a full-blown yes. My whole body, every single cell is saying yes in agreement to it. And that's what's beautiful. And life is full of all this space for yes and lots of room for no, because there's both. It's not just one or the other. It's all of it. And then there's maybes. Be in room for maybe. That's okay. You don't have to know everything right away. Oh my God, the gentleness and finally accepting that, oh my God, I don't have to know everything right now. And it's okay if I have to backstep a little bit and da 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 da. I mean, it's fascinating, really exploring this stuff. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So speaking of gentle, so you're a doctor of chiropractic, right? Is your title. And so, just to help educate our audience, because I was fairly new to this field as well, in the sense that what's the difference between when you make adjustments delivered with, like, call it low force or non-force versus with force, right? My understanding with force is when you're cracking the back or spine or whatever it is. So what's the main difference within the world and realm of being a doctor of chiropractic low force versus with force?
It is literally just the execution.
Mm.
So it's exactly that. It's the force, because the beauty of chiropractic, there are over 300 ways to practice chiropractic.
Whoa.
Yeah, which in school, this was, a little bit ago, I heard about 100 and something. Now, even since then, 300. What? So that's in itself an interesting story, and whatever, that we can talk about that later. But so the difference is just the way that it is delivered, but the same effect is happening on the body. So it's
Mm.
dependent on what is the tone of that body that you're working on. So when I work with a patient, I'm assessing, and I like low force because it is gentle. If someone has never been exposed to chiropractic, or they've been exposed to, what media has shown, that can be a little nerve-wracking for some. We'll talk about that later. But when it's this gentleness, this whole notion of, since I've experienced the full spectrum, I've been adjusted since I was in single digits. So I've felt all of them. And the later one with Dr. Kenny was the low force, which I thought, wow, I can still have the same results and I don't need this big force correction. And
Mm.
also there's something that happens, that your body becomes entrained because it's energetic. So my body and my spine, they're entrained, which means that it adapts. When there's input, when there's a stressor, when there's a physical stressor, an environmental stressor, an emotional stressor, my body adapts and I'll have an adjustment. It's a spontaneous adjustment. My body has been entrained now so that I can release that interference because I have this body awareness now from just all the experience. So what I like about that is the body is really meant to have everything that you need, and you're just facilitating it to have that free flow, and it gets help to be entrained, which is what the chiropractic adjustments do depending on the technique. But then eventually your body does it on its own. You don't need somebody to have this external force, which is
Mm.
helpful at first, because if you're not used to it, you need to be guided through it. Your body needs to get used to it, that takes time. But after a while, no, you don't need this external thing. All you need
Mm.
is yourself and your own awareness. You got to learn how to listen and what you need to do to adapt and move your body, use your body. But the goal is that you don't need a big force to come through. Now, granted, if you pop your shoulder out of alignment, or, pop a knee, yeah, you need a force correction back in. But for regular day to day, your body's meant to adapt and not need
Mm.
something so big. So there's different ways to do it. They all work. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of what does the body need in that moment. So some people more sensitive, some people more dense. They want the big adjustment. As
Right.
long as you do your exams and do your due diligence, you're safe to do any process. Doesn't matter.
So I want to understand more about that, because when I first got exposure to, going to get a chiropractor to get my spine adjusted or realigned, so to speak, it's always been with force. So it's always by cracking it back, you hear it pop, right? It's like, oh, okay, you have that, feels good. But then if I then shift to then low force, is it as effective? Do people question that, or, how do you address that for your patients?
So yes, it's just as effective. It's
Hmm.
amazing. So first started with, bone out of place. That was the old school way. You do the big bones and popping and cracking. What they noticed is, as they were doing palpation, as they call, just
Hmm.
doing palpation, which is just touching the spine, the body, the person, like if you just had a session where it was just checking out the exam, they had improvements just from the palpation. So that meant that low touch force still gave this opening to the person. So I'll say, this is another reason why I like low force. It places more responsibility on the individual to actually be active with their care rather than just passive, like, hey doc, fix me. Like, no, we're not doing that. You need to be responsible for what you're doing and what your healing process is. It's different for everybody though, I must say. And corrective care takes time. So it depends on the individual. If they can really do their homework at home, which is a lot of movement, exercises, all this, they can do that, great. If not, which I'll notice, okay, if you can't, then yeah, you got to come in and we got to move your spine so your brain starts understanding that you are literally in existence in that zone. So it's, of course, it's definitely effective. There's people that will only do that energetic one, which is NSA, the Network
Hmm.
Spinal Analysis by Donnie Epstein, founder of it. It's insane what happens to the body, even on a biological level, which is
Hmm.
wild. like thyroid issues or digestion issues. I mean, it is this light, low force, and what's happening is there's an energetic movement being released within their own bodies, and they're contorting and moving their own spine. There's no one applying anything there. That's a force. You're letting your own innate intelligence unravel it. So yes, there's some people that if they're only used to one way, they're like, well, I'm not doing that. I want to be popped, doc. Pop me. Give me that popcorn.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, we'll see. Let's try this way first. Let's see if there's something else that can happen here. So it depends. And I do both. I just prefer the low force because my own personal reasons is I want people to be responsible. I want you to be aware of your body and not just be passively going through life and something's happening to you. Like, no, what are you doing? What are we doing? What's your mindfulness throughout the day of how you carry yourself, of what you're doing literally with your body? How are you sleeping? You know, all these little things. So it's patient education, but you can also do that with force correction too. So it's just a matter of where you prefer. And it's probably going to evolve as I keep being in my profession. We'll see.
Yeah. Got it.
For now, I like low force because it's gentle.
Gotcha. So you mentioned NSA, which kind of leads to my next question. So
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Ivonne, but I understand that you have quite a deep bench of tools in your toolkit. It's not limited to, but some of the things you mentioned is NSA, network spinal analysis. I understand there's also applied kinesiology.
Kinesiology, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as well as NET, neuro emotional technique.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about each, is this pure science? Is it woo-woo? Is somewhere in between? I'm learning as I'm going as well. So I'd love to kind of hear the perspective of these different various tools you have in your toolkit.
Yeah. So woo-woo. So the woo-woo that's been a theme among chiropractors in general, that they've been put into this category of just, oh my God, that's woo-woo. You're selling snake oil. I've heard so many interesting things when it comes to how chiropractors are defined, which I didn't even know about until I was in school, because I was raised with chiropractors and they were just always the ones that would fix everything. They would fix if I had a fever or a cold, or if I had a tummy issue or whatever. I mean, they were just your one-stop shop. So I thought they were amazing. There was nothing weird about it until I realized, like, oh, this profession has some limitations because others have placed some limitations on there. So there's tons of science. There's been amazing studies, double-blind studies. There's random control styles. So all these things. So when it comes to NET, that one's fascinating. That one is not technically a chiropractic technique. It was developed by a chiropractor, but there are spinal levels associated with emotional experiences that can be remembered in your system. So this doctor, the Dr. Walker, he is the one that developed these connections, and NET is touching on that deep part of your unconscious, subconscious, your reptilian brain, your mammalian brain. And they've done functional MRIs before and after of this technique. Every single part of that technique has been proven by science, down to the muscle test. Yeah, down to the muscle test. It's beautiful. So the muscle testing, that's the applied kinesiology. Applied kinesiology is a broad term, and that's linked in with a muscle test. A muscle test is like a reflex test. It's like when you go to your MD and somebody hits your little knee and your leg goes bink. That's a reflex, right? Your body is full of reflexes with everything, which is a whole other fascinating topic. So when it comes to this neuroemotional technique, for example, you are literally testing the system to identify where is there a memory that is locked in, that was there for survival because of your mammalian brain, your reptilian brain. There's no time when it comes to your reptilian brain. Your mammalian and reptilian, that is just pure survival. Time doesn't exist. And that's where all your little traumas will live, that can rear its head and give you these things in your life that you don't really understand why you're doing them, but you know that they're self-limiting and you're kind of stuck in a cycle. So it's able to identify what those things are, right? So not woo-woo at all. They did functional brain MRI before and after of what part of that neocortex and the brain, just the amygdala, tons of little parts of the brain, what is being fired off when you have a memory of a traumatic event. Did the technique, did the brain scan again, that part is not firing anymore when you have that thought of the event. So it's not like you're erasing memories. you're recalibrating and what they call extinguishing it. You're making yourself neutral so that then you're free to make better choices because you're not driven by this reflex of, oh my God, I was 5 years old and there was something that happened with a dog and now I'm scared of dogs all the time, when really that was just one little event, something like this. So that's amazing. Science is showing all this stuff. When it comes to the muscle test, which is another big thing that people like to talk about that might be woo-woo, Power versus Force is a book I think I mentioned to you before. David Hawkins, MD, he talks about why that muscle test works. So it's, again, reflex, proven by science. It's just a signal to see what's your body's response to an external stimulus. And that stimulus could be, well, it could be internal too. So we're going the 3 T's: thoughts, traumas, and toxins. These are the 3 things that your body is either going to absorb, it's going to match, or it's going to succumb. So you're going to really have a response to all these externals, internals, and externals, internals. So what is your body doing with that information? Where does it put it? So a lot of science behind all this stuff, and we still need to learn more. But what's fascinating is that we know a lot, and there's all these little techniques that can really unwind the why of what we're doing, make different choices with that, right?
So when you're saying like muscle tests, my understanding is muscle testing is almost like a form of communication with the person's subconscious. Is that right?
Yeah, with their subconscious, with their internal innate system, their unique system, what their reality is. And we like to say a lot emotional reality, because we're all in our own emotional realities. It might not be the same. You and I might not have the same one, but we're in this world of reality that feels very real to us. Because the amazing thing about the brain, it doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined.
Yeah.
So we can use that to our benefit, right?
Yeah.
So muscle testing is a way to communicate with your body's innate intelligence and getting a response of, okay, there's something here, we're hot on the trail, or, oh, no, that's not really an issue for me, it's something else maybe, or whatever. So it's a communication, it's a language. It's a very fascinating way to communicate with the system and find very specific answers. And it's not, I should say, because people will like to say like, oh, well, so I can ask about the future? Like, can I ask about like this? Like, no, you can't ask about future events. It's not like a crystal ball. We're not doing that. We're not getting like a yes and no answer of what we're supposed to do, particularly in the future. We're getting a yes or no for present moment, present time. What's true for you right now in this moment? And then what do we do with that?
I'm getting the body chills. It's telling me I'm probably on the right path here. But one of the things that I've come to realize when I really dived in deeper into my own inner work, but really just understanding, this whole world and spectrum of, mind, body, and soul. And the thing that came to me is that before I really didn't understand this statement, which was when you heal the past, you heal your present and future.
Yes.
And I can't help but when I'm hearing you talk about the various tools that are in your toolkit, the root of it is trying to understand and helping to your patients to link what part of the past needs healing because you heal the present and future. So my question to you is, does that statement resonate with you? What does it mean to you?
Yes.
And how's that incorporated in your work?
That is 100% a big piece of what this is, acknowledging what is and what was. And the other technique I like to use is constellation. So facilitating constellation work, that is another piece. But why that came to my mind is you're healing the present moment because of whatever's happening to you is in the present moment. But the thing could have happened 10 years ago. But also when you think about epigenetics, and this is like a whole other topic, but we'll see if we go into it, but we're inheriting our family story too. How many things have we agreed upon or heard as we were conscious growing up? But then if you think about epigenetics, we inherit our hair color, our eyes, our skin. We inherit emotions too. Science has already proven that. So sometimes there's this gene, we're all sequenced, it's not our fault what our genes were made of, but it is dependent on what is our experience in the world and what gene is going to be expressed of how we interact with a certain situation because of what our past familial history is literally in our bones and our blood. But to go back to your statement of, you're healing the past and present and future, you 100% are, because again, time doesn't exist in your body and in your spiritual body and your mind. There's no time clock. That brain of yours can think of something from 10 years ago and you're right there. Your whole body will viscerally respond to that. So where the healing comes from is acknowledging what is, taking responsibility for what is yours, and giving back everything that is not your responsibility, whatever you took on. Because sometimes we take on, this is more constellation work, which, by the way, the movie Encanto, Disney's Encanto, that is a constellation. I don't know if you've watched it yet, but it is.
Well, we have.
It is
Love
touching
it.
on constellation the entire time. Like, oh my God. So there's always a place for everything. Every piece, every person, there's a place. And a true acknowledgement must happen of what is true, what was. You don't want to live there, but you have to acknowledge it. Because once you do, you understand that this is a piece and a part of who I am. So even me not wanting to talk too much about my origin story, it's because I already visited all that stuff in a big way, but I had to acknowledge it for sure. I was locked into patterns and story, right? So present moment, present time, that's where the magic is. You have lots of choices here. And that's the point of healing, is really acknowledging, okay, what's really going on here? What's underneath the surface layer? Because on the top layer, our ego, or whatever our red herring is, it wants to kind of avoid and stay in the comfortable pattern and the familiarity of whatever is. But really diving in a little deeper, you discover, well, what was the real issue here? And sometimes it just doesn't even make any sense of what the issue might have been. It's fascinating, because usually when some kind of trauma happened, it was when we didn't have a fully developed brain. So we associated things a little differently. So then there's a loss of truly understanding what is, but yet it was an event that made an impression on you for whatever reason. So like that book, The Four Agreements, there's there's one thing I remember from that the most is, how many things did you really unconsciously agree to that you've carried on into your entire adult life, when really, if you thought about something, you're like, wait, is that really me, or was that somebody else's thing? Because that doesn't resonate for me. There's a lot to this, but share more what you're thinking about when it comes to this part of you. Like, what have you experienced when it comes to your own healing in the present moment, and what you've seen change in your future because of it?
Yeah, no, I want to go deeper in this because let my audience know, we actually met at a constellation workshop.
Yes,
I think that's when we first really connected. I mean, my family has gone to the Healing Center. It was this workshop where, so this funny story is that they were promoting the workshop on their bulletin board, right, where in terms of flyers of upcoming workshops. And my wife Ruby saw it about a month before the actual date of it, and was telling me about it. And the way she described it, I immediately knew, okay, that's something I really want to go to. And she's like, but then the way she described it, I didn't know if she wanted to commit. I'm like, no, let's do it together. Why don't we go? Why don't you just go sign up, right? But then we didn't immediately sign up. And then when we finally reached out to the organizer, oh, it's already filled. And I was really bummed, but I was like, no. We're gonna be there.
Go?
Yeah, we're because in my mind I already visualized and like manifested, no, this is what I want. This is going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. And I mean, I did get a little bit of a heated discussion with my wife. I was like, oh man, we should have signed it before or not. But I'm like, you know what? It's okay. It's universe. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But we're going to go. so I told her, just reach out to Kate. Just reach out again, right? And just let them know that we still have interest. If for whatever reason, someone dropped out, there's a spot. And I think it was like the week before, or some like really imminent to the actual date of the workshop, we got an email saying, hey, because you expressed that there's actually 2 spots filled. I was like, aha. And so we went, and there was this eye-opening experience for us. But to explain because I really want my audience to understand, what is constellation work? That's really where I got this statement of, healing the past really means healing the present and future. Because, in my podcast, I mentioned about SOS, subconscious operating system. And that's language we download on our early childhood from 0 to 7, from observations we see from our immediate environment. That could be our parents, that could be our culture, our grandparents, whatever it may be. But that's only things we experience in our current present lifetime that we understand, which what I wanted to bring awareness to my audience is that it's not you. It's because you were pre-programmed and it was downloaded.
Yeah.
But what I've learned from constellation, I'd love to get your perspective on this. What I learned from constellation is that when you do not resolve or feel through the emotional, whether it's pain, trauma, or something that spiked the emotions within you, to understand what's the message it's really trying to help you deliver and how do you feel through it so that it can really fully express itself. You hold on to it. And what I learned from constellation is that it goes well beyond our current lifetime, in a sense that it could be our father or mother that's felt it, our grandparents or multi-generation, whatever it may be, that if that wasn't resolved, it get passed down. But then that might have us have this certain type of knee-jerk reaction emotionally that might trigger where it's like, why does that always set me off? But it doesn't feel like it's you. And with this constellation work, it's to be able to feel through it and resolve it, and therefore you're healing it from that part. Am I saying that right? Or
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job. That's exactly it, because it didn't start with you. It's actually the name of a good book that anyone should read about constellation. And it's just this notion of acknowledging what is, and it is truly conflict resolution. That is what constellation is within your family system or within any system, because you can do this with business too. So family system, that's a closed system. You cannot exclude anything from your blood and bone, every part of it, no matter who. I mean, if you look back 9 generations, that's around 3,000 or 4,000 people that are just in your bloodline. 8 generations back, that is in you, that is in your DNA. And so when you might have a challenge in your present moment life, and it is just like what you said, that you're like, well, why am I reacting to that? There's no rhyme or reason. There's this entanglement that's happened. And what happens is we learn that we're doing this out of love and loyalty. We're doing it in a sense of this part of our family that had this unresolved issue. We're carrying it because we're thinking we don't want to exclude that person. So we want to carry that energy forward. But what we don't realize is we're not allowing that person to have their dignity, their faith, their destiny. And we're not allowing ourselves to live our true destiny because we're carrying on their burden, which was never our choice or our fault to do, or our purpose. So then we can make actually a choice to change that and say, okay, I acknowledge your heavy fate. I acknowledge what was here and what was true for you, but I'm going to take that blessing now that you get to be in that place and space in time. And that was your path, but it doesn't have to be mine. Because this, out of loyalty, we don't want to forget anybody. We do this in family all the time, that if, it's like that survivor's guilt thing that can happen. It's like, well, no, we don't need to do that. How is that serving anybody? It's not a true service. But what is a true service is including everybody that's involved. And then also honoring, okay, I have my own path and destiny here. I'm not a thief. I don't need to steal another family's story. This is all happening on the deep subconscious, unconscious level. We're not consciously doing this at all. Or if we do, that's another thing. Yeah. So constellation is a beautiful movement of resonance so that you can free up sometimes the story that we even tell ourselves of what we thought was true for our parents. I mean, the easiest thing to always look at is our parents. They can be our deepest teachers, healers. Say if you're enlightened, go home for a weekend and see how you do, because your family will really pull out all of your old traumas and dramas. And I do believe that we choose our family. I mean, there's no way to prove that, but I think we, on a soul level, choose our family for unique purposes and lessons that we want in this lifetime. But that's kind of esoteric, but I do believe that. So, when our parents, if we can actually see who they are as humans for example, and really acknowledge and accept them with all their strengths and their limitations, and stop putting them on this place of what they should have been or whatever. No, they just are. They're human too. They learned something from their parents, and it just keeps going back and back. So to hold them to a standard of this idea of who you think they are, when you open that up and actually want to unfold and see what's the truth, you free them and you free yourself. And you get to see a new truth and reality, a new emotional reality of what else was happening here, depending on, oh my God, whatever happened in everyone's life. I mean, we're all, usually, since we're here in America, we're pretty much all immigrants, unless you were native to the land. So that alone, just seeing what had to have happened for you to even be in existence is amazing, and a sign of true thriving, because of everything that our families have gone through. We get to be here, and why would we ever want to not take that in or take it for granted?
Yeah.
So
I almost feel like we could do a whole episode on just constellation work
oh
alone.
God, totally.
I'm gonna have to have you back for that.
I love it.
So I'm really curious, Dr. Yvonne, I mean, without breaking any confidentialities, but is there any experiences or stories of transformations that you can share where it made you believe like, wow, this is the real deal? Like, in terms of this path that you're on, whether it's chiropractic or whether it's the different tools that you've learned along the way, like what stories, if anything, you can share that made you go like, oh my God, like this is legit?
There are so many.
So many to pick from, right?
There are so many. Yeah, I'm in constant awe of this work. Okay, let's see. What is the one? Because oh man, there are so many. So one is coming to my mind. This woman came in, and she had a rash from head to toe over her entire body, just total rash. And she was determined to figure out what was going on. She was super suffering. She had no idea what she was doing wrong, right? She was trying everything. So that's why you go to a professional. If you tried everything around the block, you want to figure out something else, right? You got to try something new. So she came in and we did constellation work. We did food stuff. We did, allergy tests, all that stuff. Because we look at, toxins. We look at nutritional supplements. We look at hydration. Are you getting oxygen? All these basic biological things. And for her, we went through a few gamut of things. We do a few sessions. It takes time to figure out what's going on with somebody when they're at this level of, like, in her case, a full body rash. And what I saw was she needed a flower essence. So homeopathy. If no one knows what homeopathy is, oh my God, what an interesting tool. It's plant stem cells, and they all have a different resonance to them of an emotional component. And so we located one essence, and her rash went away, and it had been there forever. And it was just a little tincture. So that was one that pops in my mind, because that woman was suffering so tremendously and was just trying everything, and then fully gone within a week, which is amazing. The thing that fascinates me, no matter what the story is, because there's so many things, but the body wants to be well. And it is always trying to communicate with you that it needs something. And sometimes it gets really loud, like the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So what I'm forever impressed by is it doesn't take much of the right thing. That is what is fascinating. Because in the case of homeopathy, it's literally these little tinctures that are just like, wait, what? What is that? It's a you got that from a plant? Like, why is this one little drop going to do anything for this body? Right. So that was a big one. And I don't know, like, as I'm thinking, I'm like, there's more. Like, we've done little mini constellation sessions with folks, and there's this one woman, she had a major conflict with her son. Son wasn't even present for the constellation, and she did her constellation. It was all about whatever the dynamic was, right? And she gets home that night, and she sees her son slow dancing, and he had no idea what the heck she was doing. He's like maybe a teenager or something, and he's like slow dancing, and his whole mood had shifted just by the work she did separate from.
No way.
Yeah. So I'm like, what? So this feeling and sense of when you do the work, it ripples to everywhere else. So
Yeah.
she thought, okay, this kid is, who is this kid? What happened? And he was like an eight, there's a whole story there. But I was like, okay. So things like this, I'm forever impressed by. I mean, with babies, I'm obsessed with this too. Like they'll have like the weird skull cap thing where they have like the rash on the head, whatever.
Yeah.
It could just be a toxin. And so we just extract that with some rosemary with a homeopathic remedy. It's just, okay, the body has a toxin. We need to remove the toxin. This is how we found it with applied kinesiology. Boom. That kiddo going through different Western medicine, maybe there's a way to figure it out, maybe not. For the most part, we've seen usually the cases that come to us, once they've been everywhere else, they come to us because they've tried everything. So they're going to try the woo-woo doctor.
Yeah.
So that was another one. My own personal experience, my doc, I came into her pretty broken when I was 20. And she said I had a gluten sensitivity. And I was like, what? I'm Italian, Argentinian. I eat gluten all the time. What do you mean? And I kid you not, when I went off of it, I went for real off of it, it was like this veil lifted from my eyes and I could actually think clearly. Now, I was in my undergrad still. I was barely getting by my entire life. I was struggling to like learn and like get the information out. My grades went up to A's right away. And I only had, a year and a half left of my grad school, but my brain fought, like my own personal experience is the thing that I think of the most, because I'm like, I was on the edge of, if I didn't go one way, it could have gone a really bad other way. And I think
Mm.
of the intervention of, this is simple. It was with nutrition. It was with working on thyroid stuff. It was working on, the emotional state. When you have a combo of help, your body reacts and has beautiful transformations. And if I didn't have that intervention, I don't know where I would have been, right? And I see
Yeah.
that with tons of patients everywhere with everything, between working, because I work with my mentor too, and then I have my own private practice. So I just see fascinating things all the time, and I'm forever humbled by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Dr. Yuan, I want to reiterate this because this is the main takeaway I got from what you just shared. And I think this is why I just really resonate with you is that you really look to find the root cause of things from that perspective. How do you nip that in the bud? It's not so much about treating the symptoms.
Bingo.
And I think right now in the information age that we have, in that, this whole dopamine fix of, like we want to be solved instant, 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 is that I have a problem, I just need a solution, so fix me. And when you have that mindset of doing that, it's then people are saying just fix my symptoms. I don't really care about the root cause. And for me, it's, within the last, probably in the last 5, 6 years, but even when I first started my spiritual journey, that's when I really started understanding, wow, if you simply just understand and identify what's the root cause and then just do a small tweak,
Mhm.
it leads profoundly to very, very different inner world, but also outer reality.
Bingo. Yes. The root cause, 100%.
Right?
And it's the three T's. Is it your thoughts?
Yeah.
Is it toxins? Or is it that your body is just full of trauma? What is it? So I like to say there's three pillars, and it doesn't matter which one gets hit first, the other two are going to follow. It's a tripod.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the root cause of what happens? So yes, sometimes you're just standing and like a tree will fall and you get injured physically. Okay. But then what else comes on board? Oh my God, the world is out to get me. I have a curse on myself, whatever oh my God, the same thing could happen to us, but we have a different emotional response to it, right? And
Right.
then so coming to the root of whatever it is for that person is the key. And that's why it's an art to work with an individual, because you are going on the journey with them of whatever their makeup, their individual makeup is. It's a deconstruction, and there's
Yeah.
always a priority. The
Yeah.
body will, that's why I like the technique that we do in the office, because the body has a priority of what it's ready and willing to do in this moment. Your body will also always be looking out for you, and it will never take you somewhere that you're not ready for, which is
Mm.
beautiful. So
Mm.
that's why I love applied kinesiology and honoring, let's test your system. Now I could say with muscle testing, there are machines that you can place your hand on, or machines you can walk through, that will give you tons of information. And in the day and age of machinery, I know that there's some advancements there and all that, but I like working with the human hand to hand. I'm old school. So there's FDA approved machines that do all this stuff too. So again, on that thought of woo woo, it's not woo woo. They've really discovered all this stuff. So it's just a matter of, okay, how are you going to approach it? And I love this image. It's like the buffet, the beautiful big buffet of life. I may have already shared this one with you. I don't know. But this big, beautiful buffet, like all the fancy things are on there, the good wine, if you're a wine drinker, the cheeses, the fruits, all the organic foods, whatever. Doesn't matter. But the avenue to get to the finer things in life, it could be a toothpick. It could be your hands. It could be a fork. It could be a chopstick. It doesn't matter. So in the sense of, is it chiropractic? Is it acupuncture? Is it homeopathy? Is it TRE? Is it NET? It doesn't matter. Is it physical movement because your body needs breath work and you've been sitting all your life? Whatever it is, do it. And then you still get the riches. So that's why all these things exist in life, because they work for somebody. Doesn't mean they're going to work for you. But that's like the notion that I see with people, that I chose these things that I love because they worked for me, and I've seen them work for others, but it doesn't mean that it's exclusive too, right?
Got
So root cause, yes. And there's always a root. There's always a reason. Nothing is happening by accident. I've really seen that to be true, know it to be true. It's all purposeful and signaling. Again, your body is constantly working for you, and you want to take care of your system. Mind, body, spirit. Take care of all those avenues.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so here's a question I have, is that what has been like a common misconception about your field that the general public just tends to misunderstand?
Well, the blanket term of chiropractors, there's like two main things that I've heard so many times. One is, oh, well, if I go to the chiropractor, that means I have to go to you like 3 times a week for the rest of my life, right? I'm like, no. Like, maybe that's for you because I don't know, that might be your unique case. But no, the point here is that we're teaching you and empowering you so that you understand how your body works and that you don't have to rely. So you go into the wellness care. There's this thing of like, chiropractors sell snake oil. I've seen like so many articles about that. I was like, what does that even mean, snake oil? But it's this idea that we're doing weird woo-woo stuff when really it's like, no, this is backed by science now. Like, that's old school. I don't know what was happening back in the day, but we know so much about your neurology. We know so much about your physical biomechanical structure. We know so much about your neuroemotional body and mind. So that notion of you have to come a million times or else it doesn't work, not true. And then there's a big one that I keep hearing about too, that it's dangerous and you're going to get a stroke if you have a cervical adjustment. That's a big one that is so, really? Yeah, I guess that's good you haven't heard it. So the classic cervical adjustment of like, I'm going to twist your neck and go and do that to you. People are very scared of that because they've been told that that's how people get strokes. So what we know now, because there's doctors that have done the science, gone to court with this, there's tons of trials that are now proving how it is so unlikely to give a stroke to somebody. What happens, they have identified that, if anything, it's a misidentification that somebody is already in the process of a stroke before they have an adjustment. Now, granted, even the adjustment, now they show that even the force of an adjustment, it's impossible to dissect this vertebral artery unless you have a connective tissue disorder, which you would know about early on in life. If there's something wrong with your literal connective tissue, if you have an underlying disease, you find that out through your history if you're doing the right thing. But for the most part, it's possible, not probable. Like it's so unlikely. So that one, when I hear that one, I think, oh my God, chiropractic is so gentle and amazing. And that is another reason why I like the low force, because so many people are so scared of this force correction. I'm like, well, let's just nip that in the butt. We don't even need to go there. We can still have the same effect by doing this gentle way. And then there's not even a question that anything could have happened. So that's a big one that I like to kind of touch on, and I've seen so much, and I never really knew about it until I was in school, because that was never my paradigm growing up. Chiropractors were just the safest people in the world, and they were just amazing, and they were miracle workers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I want to add to what you just said actually too, because and I think it reinforces the topic we mentioned earlier in this interview, which is that in your first one, you're saying this misconception that, well, if I start going to a chiropractor like you, then I'm going to have to go consistently for the rest of my life. I think that starts with the mindset, because then you're assuming, well, you're going to fix me. And it's almost like you're letting go or avoiding the responsibility for yourself of, hey, the body can heal itself. You don't have that belief yet in you.
Bingo.
And if that's really the case, like, I'm drawing parallels to when I take on clients. I don't take everyone, because if my language and what I'm sharing does not resonate, it's I'm just here to facilitate. I'm not here to actually do the healing. Healing is you. I just seen enough, heard enough, and just like, hey, it's just a small tweak of perception on what's really unblocking you, right? That's the thing with that misconception, is what comes with it is also that lack of belief that the body can heal itself. That's what came to me when you said the first one. And then the second one.
Oh, the vertebral arch, like you're going to give someone a stroke.
Yes. So what came to mind when you mentioned that is whether you think you can or you can't. Either way, you're right.
Yeah.
And so if you already planted the seed of the belief that, wait, if I do this, my trigger, then if you're on a cusp, then that belief system, you are going to essentially manifest that if you really believe that. But
100%.
The net neutrality of the event, what I'm hearing from you, is that no, science prove it doesn't, but the mind is so powerful that it'll believe whatever you believe in. So if you have that belief or limiting beliefs in you, then that fear will feed on itself.
100%.
And what is fear? Fear is false evidence appearing real, right? So
100%. Yeah. Bingo. You said that perfectly.
So I just wanted to share that. Yeah.
I love it. It's just so true in that. Even I kind of questioned myself if I would even bring up the stroke thing. I was like, why even give energy to it? But at the same time, it is true that people think that. So it would be beneficial for the people that are logical mindset, because something in their brain locked into that. So, okay, there's evidence. Will you go with the evidence of what has been proven? It's very unlikely that that would actually happen. Would that change your belief in this or not? And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, I let go after that. But right. It's important that you acknowledge that. It's exactly it, of just, what have we been taught to believe, and then are we even open to the possibility of something different? Yeah. And that's on a very personal level of who is really open.
Right.
Right. It's like the closed pistachio example, if you've heard this one before, where it's like, okay, little pistachio, usually they have that little slit, right? Yeah. What about the ones that are totally sealed shut? You try and bite on them, it hurts, you're gonna break your teeth on it. Some people or some things are truly closed pistachios. So I'll leave that be. That's just not for me. That's just not for me. But the ones that have a little opening, okay, right. We'll go in there a little bit. We'll ease in. I don't care how long it takes, but I'm open to the curiosity or the facilitation of the possibility. And that's the beauty of this work too, of why I do it, is I want to empower. That is the point of it. Empower the idea that your life, like if you've had a really good day and it was like the best day ever, but it was like one, I'm like thinking, well, what if you had that every day? Maybe not perfectly every day, but for the most part, like that's the trend. Can we inspire that thought of, when did you feel your healthiest? When did you feel embodied? Win. And then let's manifest and actually take action steps to do it forward. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So in terms of mind, body, and soul, Dr. Ivonne, what are some habits or actions that you've incorporated in your own personal life that helped you balance your own personal mind, body, and soul that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, done everything, it feels like, but there's so much. So in the past, done tons of stuff. So it was all about, there had to be something that had to do with body. So it was either chiropractic, adjusting, massage, It's something that is truly helping you discover your body in a safe way. And then food is huge. So high density, clean foods that are really for you are huge. So part of the work that I do is really inviting somebody to listen to their system, that when you eat a certain thing or drink a certain thing, how do you feel before, during, and after, so that you can identify, what is my body resonating with, right? And what I've learned now is that the body is very diverse dynamic. If you do the same thing over and over again, the body can kind of get a little lazy or sluggish, or even think that there's an invader when you do the same thing over and over again. So the idea of being open. So I make sure I eat in season as much as I can, organic as much, organic always, really pasture raised meats. Like there's a difference in just the essence of if there was this animal that lived on land rather than in a cage, you can tell the difference in taste, right? So food's a big one, movement's a big one. And then now, as I've gotten older, it's really incorporating, well, always I loved nature, but I like to do my little nature hikes and runs multiple times a week, just little bursts so that my body can recalibrate. Because I'm into making sure that there's a balance and a safe space for me to recharge. And city life, car life, busy life, we're not made for all the advancements that have happened in this world. Our bodies are old school design. So we're meant to really eat, sleep, walk around, be in community, and not have all this extra stuff. So you mentioned dopamine. I don't know if you read or listened to Dopamine Nation by Dr. Lemke, but wow, I think she released it last year. It really shows how important it is to get off of devices. I know that this is our world that we're in now, and that's one of the things that I've been resistant to with this whole, even doing interviews and things. It's like, oh my God, the internet. It's a whole beast. But used in the right way, it's a beautiful tool, and you reach so many people, and that's when it's worth it. So to take care of myself, I make sure that I'm not glued to a device. I make sure I do sleep hygiene, make sure I eat right, and I move my body. If I'm doing that regularly, my body's happy and healthy. And then also seeking help from others, understanding that I have this way to me that I've always had as a kid that I can do everything on my own. I'm good. I don't need help. No, we all need help. So even with my independent nature and all that, what I've realized is we really are meant to be tribal. We're meant to be communal. So even little examples of this is, okay, I need I don't know if you've ever read Kurt Vonnegut. No, he's fun. He has an interesting take on society and the human experience. And one of his things was, we're just kind of farting around. And in the sense of we're just humans really meant to be out in this experience. So if you need an envelope, don't go buy 100 envelopes. How about you go to the local post office and interact with a human and get one? Don't just stockpile tons of stuff so that you're in your castle and you're just I'm good, I'm all by myself. It's no, use your community. If you need something made for you, I don't know, a flyer or something, yeah, you could go on the internet and do it there, or you could actually hire a designer that you would meet with face to face or even on Skype or something, and have an exchange so that you're working with your community and allowing there to be an acknowledgement that there are set skills that everybody has, and why not use them to your benefit to create community. So I just being the little simple things is what I cherish. I feel like I'm this little human that likes walks. I like to walk and have a good meal and sit in the sun and, use my system the way it's meant to be used.
It's beautiful, because what came to me as I'm listening to you is that being part of that community is just merely having that energy flow.
Yeah.
It's just letting the energy flow within you, through you, because you don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel if that wheel's already been created by someone else, right?
Yeah.
So letting the energy flow. And I was in my previous interview with this lady in Turkey, that she shared this old Turkish proverb that really resonated with me, which is that movement holds abundance.
Oh, I love that.
Movement holds abundance. When you're in movement, that's when you really unlock that abundance. And what you just shared with me really just resonates with that, especially just work that you have and just being connected and just being in movement, right?
Bingo. Yeah.
For those that might be currently feeling any either physical or emotional pain, what would be one or two advice you can share with them to help them alleviate or heal from that? I know that's a very general question, but I think one of the things you touched on is don't be afraid to reach out for help, right? That's one thing.
God, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, reaching out for help, big. So sometimes folks are not blessed with having a supportive family or a big community or something, but there's lots of professionals out there that are literally doing this out of love to help others. So if there's any strength to look and search for help, that's one big thing. And it's always, I always say two things. I never skimp on health and like food, high quality food, which is basically the same thing, but like I never skimp on that. And it's worth it to invest in yourself because you'll just feel 10,000 times better. So, emotional stress and whatever comes up for a human, right? What I've seen with people is that they're deathly scared that if they feel their pain, that they're gonna like die. Like literally this irrational part comes, but it feels very real in that moment. So my encouraging thought is whatever that hard emotion is, get into a safe place and really allow yourself to feel it, because you must feel it to get through it, whatever it is. That's like Joseph Campbell stuff. Just you have to go on your own hero's journey.
Yeah.
And that you are the only one that can do it for you. It has to come from you. No one is going to do it for you. No one can do it for you. We can shine a light. We can lead you to water. We can guide. We can cheerlead. Those are all helpful. But some people never even have those options, and they're still able to transform because they just lean in and really go into the depth of the feeling. And it's innately feels scary. But the truth is, on the other side of it, you're so free because you went through something that was terrifying, and then you realize you didn't die, and then you're like, oh, I can do anything now. Okay, cool. Like, wait a second. So, but there's a path that happens. So you got to feel it to get through it, and you have to be radically honest with yourself. And it's okay.
I love that. Yeah, no, I'm getting the chills because it's really one of the driving forces of why I came up with that term, internal alternator. It's like you have energy transmit to one form or another, and if you don't feel through it, if it bottles inside, it's going to be manifest either in your mind, in a physical ailment, whatever it may be. So you just have to feel through it. And this this saying came to me, which is just like, yeah, you touched on it, which is you got to feel it to heal it.
Feel it to heal it. Yeah. It's also too, there's this other thing that in constellation they say, don't think, let it sink. So we get wrapped into this brain, right? So get in, like the thing that I would tell people, because seeing all the patients that I see, we're not moving our bodies enough at all. We're sitting in front of stuff, right? So my first thought is start moving your body, even if it's gentle little motions, because this is one of the beautiful things I love about our design. We have something called joint position sense. And that joint position sense is literally every single joint in your body is designed to move in a very specific way, right? And it is a full range of motion that it's meant to move in. And when you move through that range of motion, your body and brain start to communicate, and your brain understands, I exist. I am here. And if you lack that motion or that mobility, your brain starts to completely disengage from that part of yourself. So you have a cutoff of energy. You have a cutoff of literal blood flow, nervous system flow. There's actual biological, physiological things that happen when you do not move your body. So this is why chiropractic works. We're moving you through that joint, that range of motion that you're designed and meant to work through. And it's like an electrical box. It's a fuse box. Have you ever seen one of those? And lights go out in the bathroom. That little segment is off, right? Okay, put the lights back on. Boom. You got to move that segment. Same thing with your body. If you think of your spine that way, you got to move your segments so that you get the signal to use every part of yourself. So physically, when people are really locked into any stress, I'd say move, if you can, move your body, even if it's just wiggling your toes in bed and moving your ankles. Let your body understand, oh my God, I have feet. It's as simple as that. But sometimes when we're in a severe, like depressive mode or depressive episode, we literally just can't move, right? So it's like, okay, start small. Or since the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined, we talked about it earlier, do it in your mind. Imagine what would it be like? What would it feel like if I actually got up and did the thing? Because when you're just building that pathway, you're creating a new neural pathway, and then you're more than likely to actually do the thing, right? So they did like a little experiment with free throws with basketball. They had the team players imagine those free throws. Didn't do
Yeah.
the free throw, right? So imagine, and then they got the free throws more. Then they had another team that didn't imagine it. They just did the free throws. The people that imagined it first were able to hit those free throws
Yeah.
more effortlessly. So it's the same thing, the power of the brain, let that be another avenue of tool, brain hacks. I love brain hacks.
Awesome. So one question I always ask my guests is this time machine question, which is if there's a time machine, you can travel back 10 years, what would be one thing you would share your younger self that you feel might help accelerate your spiritual growth?
Oh my gosh. So that's a great question. Because here's what comes to my mind first with that is like,
Mm.
it was exactly what it was supposed to be.
Mm.
Like it was exactly where you're supposed to be and because the truth is what happened, right? And that's your
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one for me. I have like a time machine. I'd probably just say, you got it, kid. You got it. That's probably what I would tell my younger self is, you're good. Just keep doing your path. You got everything in its right time. That's
Gotcha.
that's
Gotcha.
not, maybe that's not too profound, but that's where my brain goes, is just like, we're so much more capable than we would ever imagine. And we usually know that after the fact. But in the
Yeah.
moment, we feel like, oh my God, I'm going to be crushed by this. I'm going to be ruined by this or whatever. But really, it's like, well, no, our body's innate intelligence wants to be alive and well. And it is this self-healing machine.
Yeah. No,
So,
well, what I got from you in your sharing is in having that self-love, self-confidence, and being able to not just be your worst critic, but your best cheerleader. Because
yeah.
when you start that from within, then beautiful things can really start unfolding for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I was thinking, like, if anything, ask for help.
Yeah.
That's really the thing. We've been so isolated, especially in the last couple of years with this beautiful
Mhm.
pandemic, which has been an awakening for so many people. But reach out and ask for help and be vulnerable. I think that's the big one, of just
Yeah.
take a chance, because we
Got it.
all got in this together and we can get out of it together too.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Beautifully
Yeah.
said. So,
Oh.
where can our audience find you, Dr. Yvonne?
Yeah, I am in Altadena, California. I am in the Healing Arts Center of Altadena, and there are multiple beautiful practitioners there. We have a beautiful Healing Arts Center with so many chiropractors, acupuncturists, healers, teachers. I mean, it's just amazing. So Healing Arts Center, and you can go on their little sweet website and you'll see my name there, my contact information. And what I would say too is, if anybody's listening with this, look at that website and see who resonates with you. I always tell people, check out, call them and see, who do you vibe with, because it's good to have referrals from people that you trust. But when you're doing it on your own, really take the chance and have a conversation and make a contact with that person and see, you're interviewing them to help you, right? And I
Yeah.
also interview my patients to see, am I really going to help them? Like, is this a good
Yeah.
fit, right? So yeah, Healing Arts Center, Altadena. I'd love to work with anybody that's ready, willing, and able. And my office is open. My heart's open
Beautiful.
too. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and I'll include your information in the show notes afterwards, so all good. But Dr. Yvonne, thank you so much for your time today. You are such a bright light,
Oh,
is what comes into mind, and
thank you.
I just feel, I really resonate with your path, your map and compass, and I'd love to have you back for a future
Ah,
episode.
I love that
Yeah.
too. It's been an honor, Ben, and I love what you're doing. It's really resonating from you. You can tell that you're fully embodied in what you're doing, and it's coming from your heart, and it's so genuine, and it's needed. And it is, like, when I started listening to your podcast, I was like, oh my God, this is stuff I wish I would have heard early on. And I feel like that's what you shared with me before. I was like, I wanted this as a resource for people as they're going on their spiritual journey. So thank you for doing
Yeah.
what you're doing too. I loved being on this, and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. Take
All right.
care.
You too. Wow, it's really fascinating to hear just how much our mind, body, and soul is interconnected when it comes to health. There's several seeds of wisdom I got from today's interview with Dr. Yvonne. The first one is the three T's: thoughts, trauma, and toxins. These are the three things that your body is either going to absorb, it's going to match, or it's going to succumb. The emotional trauma you might be feeling can get stuck in your body. And one way to release it is to acknowledge it, feel through it, to heal it. The second takeaway is don't be afraid to reach out for help. We're so caught up in our own current worlds that sometimes we forget to raise our hands and ask for help. Our bodies are meant to move, so it's important to have a habit of moving to keep our body in flow. Be curious when it comes to asking for help. And the third takeaway I got is that emotional energy can be generational. When you heal your past, you heal your present and future. This is the core essence of constellation work. When emotional energy is stored in people's physical body or subconscious, their SOS, that can get transferred generationally. And just know that it's not yours to keep if you choose not to. Folks, if you're searching for a holistic practitioner and happen to be in the Los Angeles area, I highly recommend seeing Dr. Ivonne and her gifted team over at the Healing Arts Center in Altadena. They're just an amazing group of human beings. It's like what Dr. Ivonne said. When you're open and ready to receive help, connect with a practitioner first to see if you vibe with the doctor. Find one that resonates with you. Tap into your intuition to see how it makes you feel if you work with that doctor. Please feel free to share this episode with your family and friends if you feel they can benefit in hearing different perspectives on health. After all, health is truly wealth. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe to Boom Vision to continue your journey together as we build a solid foundation of our mind, body, and soul. Please leave a review if this has made a positive impact in your life. I'd love to hear how this has impacted you. Until next time, folks, be kind to yourself, be in the light, be you. Thank you so much for tuning in to my Boom Vision podcast. If you'd like to find out more about me and this podcast, head over to benjaminyeh.com. That's spelled BenjaminYeh.com. If you haven't already, click subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.